Terroir! Now that I've got your attention, let's talk Japanese whiskey. Welcome to Kanpai Planet, I'm Mac, and today we're taking a look at Single Malt Japanese Whiskey, Shizuoka Pot Still K, 100% Japanese Barley First Edition. Whew, that's quite the mouthful. 11 months ago, I reviewed the first two general releases from the Shizuoka Distillery, Prologue K and Prologue W, and I ended that review with this. All the world's a stage for the Shizuoka Distillery. They are set to become one of Japan's whiskey powerhouses, especially as their grain to glass vision comes to fruition. Well, that vision is now manifest because, as the distillery themselves say, the prologue is over and a new chapter is beginning. A doubling down of the Shizuoka Distillery's commitment to transparency and terroir with a 100% Japanese barley release, anticipating the 100th anniversary of Japanese whiskey in 2023 as defined by the groundbreaking at Suntory's Yamazaki distillery in 1923. Shizuoka want to be part of the movement to define Japanese whiskey from Japan and of Japan. This new release is a realization of a progression that Shizuoka have undergone since they started distilling back in 2016. They used Japanese barley as part of the mash bill for Prologue K, Prologue W, and also Contact S, their third general release, which I've also reviewed on Kanpai Planet. Now they've delivered an all-Japanese barley whiskey. In terms of raw ingredients, your water and yeast are fairly easy to source locally. Your barley might not be though, and when it has been, that's led to a lot of terroir-related branding, from, for example, Bruichladdich, or more recently, Waterford. Now, I've discussed terroir on Kanpai Planet before, most notably in the third video I released on the channel titled What is Japanese Whiskey? It certainly provides a way for smaller craft distilleries to differentiate themselves from the big boys and to charge more for what they're producing. The question is it even humanly possible to tell the difference between barley varietals after aging in a blind test, and does it make the spirit actually better? Well, in the age of transparency, it definitely provides a marketing angle. Now, Shizuoka haven't gone as far as some.
On second thought, I'll just have a glass of milk from that cow.
Huh?
Notice I've been saying Japanese barley, not Shizuoka barley. The majority of barley in this release has come from Kyushu on the other side of the country. However, I suspect a Shizuoka barley version is only a matter of time. It's 100% non-peated malt. But, malt aside, what exactly is in this bottle? The fourth single malt general release from the Shizuoka Distillery. Well, the liquid is the fruity, estery, light distillate of their K pot still, their 1950s steam-heated pot still, so called because it used to be used at the now legendary, now defunct, Karawizawa Distillery. Like Prologue K, Shizuoka are calling this a single wash still whiskey because both the stripping run, the first distillation, and the wash run, the second distillation, were done on the K, which they picked up at auction and completely refurbished. That distillate was stuck into 17 casks, some first fill bourbon, some first fill wine, which were blended together to create this. That compares to 31 casks used in Prologue K. While the source of the wine barrels used is undisclosed, one of their two recent Blackadder raw cask releases, which also uses 100% Japanese barley, was aged in a red wine barrel sourced from a top Japanese winery. A clue perhaps, the liquid here has an average age of 4 years, but the components range from 3 to 5 years old. All that effort has led to a 55.5% ABV whiskey, which I'm pleased to say is non-chill filtered and has no added colour. That 55.5% has in part been inspired by the address of the distillery. The bottles are the same as those used for Prologue K, with the shape inspired by the K still and the label featuring the same Shodo calligraphy of the still. 2,500 bottles were released domestically in mid-June 2022 versus 5,000 for the prologues. International viewers fear not, because I have found out that there is an overseas release on the way. But you might want to fear for your wallets. You see, Terroir doesn't come cheap. Measure for measure, Japanese barley costs over double what its imported cousin does due to limited production areas and low yields. And that relative cost is in part driving a price tag of a whopping 18,150 yen after tax, around 135 US dollars. That compares to 8,943 yen for Prologue K. I'm scared to think what the price tag for a full-blown Shizuoka barley release will be. Is it worth it? Let's find out. If you haven't already, why not click the subscribe button? There's a lot of great stuff coming up on Kanpai Planet. Now, before we start, I should say that interestingly, the distillery have chosen not to release any official tasting notes at this stage. They want people to try it and decide for themselves. Let's check out the colour. That's somewhere between a deep gold and a deep copper. Very inviting. On the nose. Ooh. I'm getting cut grass, hay, some vanilla from the bourbon barrels, and a deep sweetness, some dates, figs, and other notes that I would normally associate with a sherried whiskey, perhaps giving us a clue that the wine barrels used here have been red wine barrels. There's also some licorice on the nose, a substance which I absolutely despise, but I'm quite enjoying in this case. There are also some fruits on the nose, some peach and some apple. Really nice. True to the brand of the K pot still, it is quite estery. Kanpai. The first thing that immediately strikes me is that this is smoother than the Prologue K. It has this really expansive, flowery mouthfeel. Not this, but this. You can almost bite into it. I'm not actually getting a lot of translation of the notes that I found on the nose onto the palate. Instead, I'm getting a little bit of ginger and some pepper, but quite soft, not aggressive at all. The finish is fascinating. This must be one of the shortest finishes I've had on any Japanese whiskey. I would use the word kire to describe this, a short, sharp finish which is a desirable quality in a sake and is typical of the Tanrei Karaguchi style, which is made up in Niigata, the prefecture where I was making sake in the Making Sake on Saddle series, which you can find on Kanpai Planet. It's the same effect Asahi were going for when they created their super dry beer. So, what's the verdict? I think this is their best general release yet. The extra year of maturation has made a huge difference. Some of those sharper, youthful edges of the prologues have been smoothed off. I actually really like that disconnect between the nose, the palate, and the finish it gave for three very different experiences. Well, in the finish's case, the lack of experience was itself an experience. Now, is it the best of their general releases because of their use of 100% Japanese barley? I doubt it. I suspect it is in part due to the fact that only 17 barrels were used to construct this release versus the 31 used for Prologue K. That's a more manageable number to work with. I've often said that almost every single cask I've tried from the Shizuoka Distillery has been great. This Shizuoka single cask is really great. Wow, this single cask is fantastic. Great choice. What a great Shizuoka single cask. This single cask is really good. So it's good to see their blending moving in the right direction. I have managed to find out that there are plans to release a 100% Japanese barley pot still W bottling, and no spoilers for those who want to go back and watch my Prologue K versus Prologue W video, I'm even more excited for that than I was for this. The distillery is also planning to build a third warehouse, so exciting times down in Shizuoka. Should you buy it? I mean, that price is punchy, and although it's a lovely dram, I cannot justify that outlay for a 3 to 5 year whiskey. Definitely one to try in a bar. The Shizuoka Distillery's reign of terroir has only just begun. Until next time, kanpai.